Chapter 15. A Plan. Evening was coming on now. Kenny's ears ached from the cold. He picked up his pace. By the time he got to the main plaza, he had worked things out in his mind. Dune and Lena weren't where they usually were. They weren't where they'd said they were going to be, either. No one seemed worried about this, so that meant Dune's father and Mrs. Murdo hadn't talked to each other lately. And that meant that Kenny was now the only person who knew this secret. So the question was, he thought as he crossed the plaza, where most of the shops were closed and only a few people hurried toward home, should he tell anyone that Lena and Dune were missing? Probably he should, but then, on the other hand, it was clear that they were missing on purpose. Maybe he shouldn't give away their secret. Or not yet, anyhow? From around the corner by the town hall came someone walking very fast who stepped right in front of Kenny and caused him to dodge sideways to avoid a collision.
"Oops," said this person. "Sorry, I didn't see you."
It was the girl named Lizzie. Kenny knew her just a little. She was a friend of Lena's, and she was one of the few people he'd ever seen who had hair the color of apricots, though right now her hair didn't shine the way it had in the summer, and her face was pale, almost bluish.
"Oh, it's you,"
Lizzie said.
"I heard you were sick,"
said Kenny.
"Are you better?" "I am,"
Lizzie answered.
"But I almost died of it. I coughed so hard I cracked one of my ribs. I thought I was going to cough from my lungs right up out of my chest."
She looked at him rather proudly.
"That's too bad,"
said Kenny. He was thinking, should he tell Lizzie about Lena and Dune? It felt wrong to tell Dune's father and Mrs. Murdo, who would be upset and alarmed. That felt like a betrayal of whatever Dune and Lena's plan was. But it was hard to keep the secret all to himself. He needed someone to talk it over with, someone he could trust. Could he trust Lizzie? He knew she'd been the girlfriend of that boy named Tick, who had deceived them all. But it wasn't her fault she'd been deceived by him. Everyone had. Lizzie turned to go. Kenny hesitated another second, and then he said,
"Have you seen Lena lately?"
"No," said Lizzie. She looked into the air, thinking.
"I haven't seen her since... It must have been 3 or 4 days ago. Why?" "Well, listen,"
Kenny said. He took hold of Lizzie's scarf and pulled her around the corner, where the wall kept them out of the wind.
"Here's what I just found out."
As he explained the mystery, Lizzie listened with avid interest. So did Torin, who was hiding behind the stump of the tree that had burned last summer. He had decided he was sick and tired of being left behind, and sick and tired of being left out of secrets, and he'd followed Kenny into town and ducked into his hiding place when Kenny ran into Lizzie. He thought the mystery of Lena and Dune was not only interesting, but also infuriating. Once again, people had gone off on some kind of adventure without inviting him. It made him so mad that he couldn't keep quiet.
"I bet I know where they went!"
he cried, jumping out from behind the tree stump and nearly scaring Kenny and Lizzie out of their skins.
"You followed me,"
said Kenny. Torin ignored this.
"We have to find them," he said. "I can help." "It's no use," said Lizzie. "They have run away together."
She took hold of her hair and stuffed it down into her collar to keep the wind from blowing it around.
"I always knew they liked each other in a special way. You could just tell." "Where would they go?"
Kenny asked.
"Someplace cozy," Lizzie said, "where they could set things up like a real home. It would be so much fun," she said wistfully. "But they're only 13, said Kenny. "That doesn't matter. This is a whole new world. The rules aren't the same."
"You're being dumb," Torin said.
"That is not what Lena would do. I know that. She wouldn't leave Poppy just to go off with Dune. I know she wouldn't." "You're too young to understand," said Lizzie. "I am not." Torin glared at her. "I know what they did," he said. "They were sick of being cold and not having enough to eat, so they went off to be roamers, to go someplace else and to get away from everything. I bet someone in town has a wagon missing and an ox. I bet they went toward the old city, because Lena knew the way from when she went before."
Kenny listened to these ideas without saying anything much. Possible, but not right, he thought. Even though Torin lived in the same house as Lena, and Lizzie had known both Lena and Dune in Ember, neither one seemed to really know them very well. Lizzie and Torin argued back and forth. Lizzie said again that Torin was too young to understand, and talked about someone named Looper back in Ember that she would have gone off with if he'd asked her to, and Torin said that anybody would want to be a roamer if they could, even if they had to steal a wagon to do it, and that his brother Casper was a roamer, and that when he was old enough, he and Casper would be a team. Finally, Lizzie turned to Kenny.
"You're not saying anything," she said. "Who do you think is right, me or him?"
"Well, I think neither one," said Kenny.
"What I think is, they wanted to be helpful. There's hardship here, just the way there was hardship in their city before, and they wanted to help then."
Lizzie and Torin both stared at him and said nothing for a moment. Then Lizzie said,
"You might be right." "Might be," said Torin. "So if they wanted to help," Lizzie went on, "where would they go?" "Some place where they could find things we don't have." "But where's that? No one around here has anything."
Kenny looked up at the sky, thinking. He rubbed his chin. If he wanted to help, what would he do? Where would he go?
"Maybe up north," he said. "Maybe they caught a ride with that roamer who was here." "But once they got there, how could they buy things?" said Lizzie. "They have nothing to trade with."
"That's true." Lizzie frowned, thinking.
"Maybe that ancient ruined city? Maybe when Lena was there, she saw things that were still left." "No," said Torin. "If there'd been good things still there, Casper would have brought them back."
They were stumped. They stood there in the cold alley, their ears and tips of their noses getting more and more chilly. Lizzie wound her scarf around her head. She coughed.
"It's so much colder here than it was in Ember," she complained. "And the air here isn't just cold, it moves and slices through you, which makes it worse."
She coughed again, a raspy cough that made her eyes water.
"And in Ember," she went on, "no water, ice falls out of the sky the way it does here, and even though people got sick there, at least they had medicine that sometimes helped a little bit. In Ember—"
She stopped.
"Oh,"
she said.
"Oh, what?"
said Torin.
"I think I know where they went,"
said Lizzie.
"To Ember!"
Kenny cried.
"I bet you're right. But is anything left there?" "Might be," said Lizzie. "At least a little bit. Probably more than here." "Then that's it. That's where they went."
Kenny felt sure of it. It felt right for both Lena and Dune. They wanted to help. They knew their old city, and they were brave enough to try and go there on their own.
"So what should we do?" Lizzie said. "Go after them and tell them it's too dangerous, and they should come back?" "Is it dangerous?" Kenny asked. "It must be," Lizzie said. "It's dark there now, and how would they even get in? They couldn't go up that river."
She swiped at her runny nose.
"I think their minds must have got a little bit unhinged by the cold and the trouble here and everything." "We should rescue them!" cried Torin. "I don't mind going out into the wilderness. It will be good practice for when I'm a roamer." "But we don't know the way," said Kenny. "I could remember it, maybe," Lizzie said. "It's up there."
She waved her hand in a vague northeasterly direction.
"We can't catch up with them," Kenny said. "They've been gone too long. Maybe they're already on their way back. Or maybe they've had an accident and they're stuck out there. If we went up on the hill beyond the far field, we might see them. Then we could go and help."
Torin was jumping up and down by now, his eyes shining and coat flapping.
"We have to go soon," he cried. "But not in the night." Lizzie wrapped her jacket closer around her. "Tomorrow," said Kenny. "We can meet up at the far field early, right at sunrise, okay? We'll just go up and look." "Okay," cried Torin. "We'll go tomorrow."
He jumped up and thumped the wall with his fist. A few yards away, a window was pushed open, and in a moment Ben Barlow poked his head out.
"What's all that commotion?"
he called. but no one was there.